The Calling Out the Shots podcast is dedicated to compassionately looking for the truth in a world full of division and lies. Humanity has not been allowed to speak freely for so long, and so in efforts to begin the conversation, I, Dr. Ishwaran Kahilithas, will be speaking to the many who have been impacted over the last few years in order to bring back the art of listening so we can all begin to hear as one. Today's guest is Alex Mitchell, a vaccine-induced immune thrombocytopenia and thrombosis survivor. It is a blood disorder that is characterized by widespread blood clots, predominantly in atypical sites like the brain and lungs, in combination with low platelet counts after receiving the COVID-19 shot. It is theorized that VITT occurs via a platelet-targeted autoimmune reaction that occurs as the contents of the m-RNA jabs travel to the spleen. VITT has resulted in Alex having a left leg above the knee amputation and has left him taking lifelong medications. Though the AstraZeneca vaccine, in his case, has taken so much of his health away, he still remains stronger than ever and has great hope for the future of humanity. Alex has become one of my good friends and even wrote the foreword to the Calling Out the Shots book. It was a pleasure having him as the first guest on this show. We spoke about everything from nearly not making it in hospital to mental health during the pandemic. You will find Alex primarily on Twitter at KE2306. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did.
Perfect. So, thank you for coming on to the podcast, Alex. I remember on Twitter when I was asking for help because I wanted to find out how those have been vaccine injured or kind of injured by the shot, how they felt. And more than just the injury itself, but because being injured, you're kind of left in the middle, or you were anyway. There was kind of extreme views on both sides. There was one side saying the shots are very bad, and then anyone who had taken it were sometimes stupid or kind of misinformed. And then the other side saying, no, you must take it, it's safe, and if you don't take it, it's so. And then you have those who've taken it, usually for unselfish reasons, usually for other family members and for transmission and things like that. Now we know they have no kind of basis to it. And then they become unwell. So then they become an outsider in all aspects because the medical profession don't see them really, or actually don't see them at all really, as a case or as a condition. And even if so, it's a rare thing. So, oh my God, you're rare, so we're not really sure what to do. The scientific community don't have any answers because we don't have any answers. And then we have both sides again, one saying, see, like I told you so, and the other side saying, no, surely that is not really an injury. I have a friend and they've taken 4 and they're fine. In a way, I don't think anyone's meant in a hurtful way or to be purposely hurtful, but it does come across as being kind of gaslit and things like that. So I wanted to find out from people who have actually been in that position. And you were the first one. You were the first one who were really open, and we set up a call. And I don't know, in the first 5-10 minutes, I could tell straight away that you were a genuine person, like your voice and your demeanor. And I think over the last 3 years, I've thought less, or let me put it in a different way. I've used my heart more and gone with my feelings more than thinking about things, because I used to think a lot. And in the last 3 years, I realized that actually a lot of your thoughts are kind of based on a false kind of reality, kind of constructed by other people. And actually what we need to focus on is how you feel. And whether it's people or things, if it doesn't sit right with me, I usually don't do it. And with you had a lot of warmth. And later on, so we spoke there and then, and you're really nice. And then we've been kind of communicating on Twitter and kind of messaging each other. And then you wrote the foreword to my book, and it was a lovely foreword. And kind of in a very short way, kind of summarized everything, not only about what's the situation, but about the resilience of man and the potential for love and also kindness, because there must have been a lot of anger in you, but I don't know, why don't you tell me a bit about yourself and what's been going on? I think loads of people know about you, but there's people who don't know who you really are. So what's been going on over the last kind of 3 years?
Well, first of all, let me thank you so much for reaching out to me all those, I think it's must be a year and a half ago, possibly more. And for everything you've said, you know, at the end about myself, I take that and I really appreciate it and thank you. I'll kind of go back to do what you did, maybe a long answer, so I do apologise.
No, okay, go ahead.
I'll kind of start where you and I made first contact and bring us up to date, but I'll tell my story in between if I can. So maybe a bit jumbled, but we'll try and make it work. So obviously, if I go with where I was a year and a half ago to 18 months ago, at that point, many people were reaching out to me saying, I'm going to do this, I want to do that, and can we try this, can we do that? And that was, so much of it was so supportive and positive. And what I've found in that time over the 18 months was that so many people say they're going to do something, and for whatever reason, not all of them nefarious, rarely do so. And that's life to a certain extent. But there are some people that say they're going to do something and they actually go ahead and do it. And I've always instantly, whether I know the person personally or not, or I'm involved or not, automatically have an instant respect for that individual, because not only can they talk the talk, they've proved that they can walk the walk, and they put that, what they said, into action, and there's been a result, and it's been a positive, whatever it may be. And you're not one of those individuals. And very early on, I still remember our first ever phone call, and all the way along in this journey, which has been, as you've said, because we're in the middle, we're in no man's land. We get it because we took one of these things and we're talking about it went wrong. We get it because, you know, from those we told you so's, you know, and we get it from officialdom. You don't exist. You're rare. You use the word extremely rare. So, you know, and it's been in many ways a journey that I don't think any human being has been put through in this way. And I don't just mean that on a personal level. I mean, as you know, for all those bereaved and injured. So you're struggling to deal with what's happened to you. You've got all this going on as well. And so many people try and do, and as I say, but all along, you said the very first phone call, you wanted to write a book about what's going on and what happens to people and what support there is, and some help and support that you have found. So, which is a wonderful, honourable thing. And all along, you kept in touch, not always to talk about the book. You would randomly say, how are you? How's the weather? These are the things that make the difference to people like me, to us, because it lets us know that we're not alone.
No, you're not alone. You're not alone.
You know, so, and I knew early on you came across a very genuine, warm-hearted, committed individual. And you, without any help from me, you didn't ask for anything from me other than to tell my story to you, which I'll go into in a minute. And then you, at the end, when you said, the book's done. And I said, you know, and I thought, well, you know, not that I was majorly surprised, if that makes any sense, knowing you and speaking to you, because it's not became you talking to me to write your book. It became a friendship in many ways, and it will be for a long time, as you know. I found in life that there's very few people I trust in life, And those that I trust in light, I try and do my best to stay in touch as much as possible. But at the moment, it's not it's carnage. I don't have that. I just don't get the time to keep up as much as I would like to. Something I'm going to try and rectify, but that's another story. And then you asked me to write the foreword. Now, having been an avid book reader on many subjects, not conspiracy, just an average general book reader all my life, I've always read the forewords because it's always interest. Words have always been something that I've been loved and interest. So there's many books that I've read, and I've always loved, because the forewords usually is something very genuinely interesting about the individual from someone who knows that individual. So for me, that's a huge honour on so many levels. And I said that to you, that really, I'm a guy from East End of Glasgow. What am I doing writing forwards? And that kind of is another example of just how insane and upside down my world has flipped in many ways. And obviously, and then when you said you wanted to do a podcast to have conversations and chats, and you asked me to be the first guest, so you keep giving me all these wonderful honours. So I really, really appreciate it.
That's okay. That's okay.
So kind of my story started, if we go back to even January 21, it was 24/7 on every mainstream channel, newspaper, radio station. Don't, protect the NHS, save lives. This is a granny killer. God, people had to say goodbye to their loved ones through screens, on telephones, all that, so people were dying in the street. The death rate was going through the roof, going by the information that we were getting bombarded with. So I went on the 20th of March, 2021 to do the right thing. I was a scaffolder, 56 years old. I was in a physical shape that it was phenomenal. I was 12 and a half, 13 stone, my body weight less than 5% fat. Phenomenal shape. So, it wasn't for me. This was to protect other people, So anyway, and was verbally, and I do mean verbally, told, you may have a sore sight arm, cold flu-like symptoms for 48 hours, which I did. And went back to work as a scaffolder, very physical jobs. I say 5 tons of steel a day, each every day, and about on the 1st of April, I was at work and I lifted something heavy and experienced what I thought I'd pulled my calf muscles.
All right, okay.
Never thought any more of it. Went home, had a bath, struggled on for a couple of days, and then on Sunday, the 4th of April, I collapsed at home. Knew I was in trouble straight away. Don't know why. Maybe something that survival mode, but was gassed, blue lighted, and rushed to the hospital, where a lady, when I became conscious, asked me to sign a form, but to go for a CT scan. It was still spinning. She came in and says to me, "We need to go to theatre. We need to go now." At that point, you think, "Well, how bad is this?" And she said, "It's the worst." I had to phone my wife and daughter, who I thought were back at home or wherever. I didn't know. Unknown to me, they were in the room less than 30 feet away from me. I had to phone them and say, effectively, goodbye. Unknown to me, as she left the room, she went and told my wife and 2 daughters that they had no hope, because they had never seen anything like this. They said, "We're not giving up, but we have no hope. And if it does survive, which is highly unlikely, it'll be from the waist up." Now, that news is any of that, you can imagine the devastation. So I was taken into surgery, and I spent 7.5 hours having clots removed from my lower abdomen, right leg and left leg. And the lady is speaking to me as I've come round, and she's informed me, we still don't know at this point what's going wrong. It's something, and as I've opened my eyes, I'll never forget the words. She said, we don't know how you're here. We don't know why you're still here, but here you are, and we hope you may stay. You know, and right, okay. And she explained to me, you know, that they were concerned about my left leg, and that went within 15 minutes from my concern to there will be an amputation. All of that, trying to take all that on board is unexplainable.
Yeah.
It's the only way I can describe it is it's a maelstrom of every possible scenario, thought, situation, and they don't last long enough for you to grasp and think of any of them. It just does, you know. And obviously, I spoke to the vascular surgeon who was now going to be doing the amputation. It kind of became very quickly, this was not about what I would like in life. This, you know, this is not an option. If you want to survive, this has to be. Still, at this point, they had no real idea what was going on. But the fact that I was supremely fit, no underlying health conditions ever, anything I had been to hospital for mostly were broken bones and appendicitis, normal sort of a East End Glasgow childhood stuff, shall we say. So, you know, and the only change in the previous 6 weeks had been the vaccination, you know. So they weren't saying definitely, but that's kind of what they were looking since. But I still, at that point, still had no clue what this was and what had happened. I spoke to the vascular surgeon who explained, you know, it was likely to be an above the knee amputation. Had a conversation about my lifestyle choices and my passions, and because I'm an old mod, I drive old-fashioned Vespas. I'm a Vespa boy, so I don't. Lambrettas always come second, but I've got to mention them because they're part of what I'm into. But I'm a Vespa boy, and it was a very passionate, emotional conversation, and I asked him for a week in the hope that it would be a below the knee for lots of reasons. And I now realise they gave me the week, but I now realise I didn't get a week because I asked for it. I got a week because I've just come out of 7.5 hours of surgery that they didn't think in any way I was going to survive. They didn't know what it was, but they knew that my body could not cope with an immediate amputation at that point. Had it been an immediate above the knee amputation at that point, it probably would have been about another hour and a half surgery without complications, because a below the knee is more complicated because the way the structure. I'm not medically, so you'll be able to understand that probably better than I. So that takes a bit longer. That's about 2.5 hours. And that was, so all the expectations were set. And a week later, I went into surgery, and when I came out, there was an above the knee amputation, that was the lowest moment ever. I don't hide that. That was probably the crashing moment to a certain extent. And something at that point, I looked at the time and there was nearly 5 hours gone. So it's not a 2.5 hour, it's not an hour and a half. And he came in, and as I say, loveliest man, most caring surgeon I've came across, and I've came across a couple now. There are some brilliant ones out there. I'm not saying that everyone doesn't. There's some real caring people that do it for the right reasons. He was in general in some ways more devastated than I was, if that makes any sense. And I said to him, look, you told me a time frame, we're way out, so clearly it didn't go anywhere way near the way you wanted it to. And he explained that, there was nothing. It was just so bad. It was even the tiniest aorta was just collapsed.
Wow.
So it did the best that it can. And I've got to be honest, I did say to him, please don't do this. I know that you've done everything you possibly can to save my leg. And I certainly know I've done everything I possibly can. And I was brought up by my mum, who brought 5 of us up on her own, who is an absolute legend in the East End of Glasgow, because she was a genuinely honest, wonderful human being, who was so fast, so clever, you couldn't win with this lady, but you laughed a lot with her because her humour and sarcasm was devastating. She called me the most thrawn, stubborn, awkward bastard that she had ever clapped eyes on. And it wasn't always said with genuine love. I now know. And now that she's no longer with us, sadly, she passed in August 20. August 20. She was, as I say, she was just something special. And she always brought us up with this: it is what it is. If you can't change it, so the past is the past, you can't go back and change it.
Mm.
So therefore, what you're going to do, you're either going to deal with it or you're not. That's your call. That's your call. But if you don't deal with it, when you do come back, if you come back, it's still going to be there.
Yeah.
And some would say that's maybe a tough love. It's not. I just think that's a very common sense, good approach to life.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, I know that nothing in this life's going to change what's happened to me. So therefore, I either deal with it or try to deal with it as best as I can, or I don't. Sorry, my wife's just come in for a cuppa. Yeah, you're fine.
It's okay.
And yeah, I can sit in the corner and feel sorry for myself to a certain extent. And that's kind of understandable, and no one would say you don't deserve to do that or be there, whatever. But that's not me. It never was my lifestyle choice. I've always been a very positive person. And I kind of think, I know that the values and things that I believed I was as a man that I'd worked towards as an individual, that I'd be selling all that out and become the biggest hypocrite in the world. And plus the fact that doesn't work for me. It's just not my nature. I think I've realised as a young boy that I was a fighter, not a flighter. And I've realised it wasn't just, in some ways, just a physical thing. It was an emotionally, spiritually, whatever way. I'm just one of these. And I've always been brought up to try and do the right thing. Not just the right thing for me, but the right thing in general.
Yeah, I mean, same. But I think that it reflects in you, because you survived it sounds just really kind of super serious condition. If healthcare staff are telling family that it's not looking good, they've had to think about that for a long time in a meeting and things like that, and then say it. So they obviously really did think you weren't going to make it, and you are here talking to me. So obviously the fighting spirit is deeper than just physical. It's there. You wanted to, and you're here.
I think I have to sort of have a look at that. If I really shouldn't be here now, what there are many reasons for it. Yeah, is it that thing fight for the human survival, an individual spirit, whatever it may be? Yeah. So therefore, the desire to still be here is, and to still be me. Yeah. Because I was quite happy being me. I'll be honest, I'd reached that place in life where, as you grow up, you set sort of where you want to try and get to in life. Most people, it's, the job, the career, the house, whatever. And to a certain extent, that was, when I was younger, that was a driving passion. But all part of that was to get to a certain place in life. Whether that be contentment, happiness, passion, joy, whatever you were. And I had my life, and I'd done probably everything I'd really set out as a young man to achieve, and not just all in mental positive ways, but the kind of, as we grow up, some people want to be football stars, some people want to be whatever. Well, I'm a massive music fan. I've been into it since I was 13, live music. So what did I want to be in? Band. And I got to do that and enjoy that wonderful experience of what you go through as a whatever type, whether it be a covers band, an originals band, or as an artist, that process of creativity, of common goals, what you want to do, and the experience of doing it live. Wow, what a buzz. And it's even more so when it's the audience is predominantly people that know this, what you're playing down to the last note, and they're very passionate about the music as you are. I'm not saying, but in your genre sort of thing. So to do that and to get to quite a you know, we headlined a scooter rally, which for being a mod, it's like as a football supporter playing, you know, going on to a celebrity fights with your football team. That kind of sort of a wonderful achievement. So I'd achieved all that and was quite content as known as Alec the Mod. And I kind of very early thought, well, I don't see why I should let this change me.
Yes, 100%, 100%.
And it's funny, that was a conversation. It was a very, very deep conversation that I had with my wife last night over that. And I says to her, you know, in many ways, I've sacrificed almost everything for what's happened to me. And I'm still prepared to sacrifice almost everything. But what I have to realise, what I can't sacrifice is what made me what I am. And that is what I am has always been my family is my priority first and foremost. And I've been aware that for 18 months, that balance has been massively out of kilter in some ways, you know, and I know already the way this year's going, that it's just not going to go any, it's not going to get quieter to a certain extent. So, you know, and that was kind of, I've got to do these kind of things, because if I don't look back and think, hold on, all you're doing here is doing this all the time, you know, you've got to try and put some kind of time for your family in. Not that I'm saying we didn't, just I'm not putting what I should be putting in. So therefore, I've always said, I don't want to let this change me.
Yeah, no, and it shouldn't, because...
You know, so that's kind of what I kind of thought to myself, well, right, that's where your commitment is. This is a fight that's not going to change, but you've still got a family and your wife and your 2 daughters. That's what this was all about. I try to raise awareness to get help and support, not just for me, but for them as well. You know, and I think a lot of us are at that stage now. We realise this fight is really going to start to win now. We can see the change.
Yeah, I was gonna. No. Go on.
And that has given us so much more energy in the last, you know, it takes what it's taken for us all, and you know, including people like yourself, to get to here, has cost us a huge amount of energy. And now we can actually focus a wee bit more on having individual conversations, regard, you know, to a certain extent, if that makes any sense. But what I have realised that because of all of what's happened over the last 18 months, that there's no real many subjects that shouldn't be spoken about anymore. Whether that be related to myself or any other topic. Because you're right, the only way we're ever going to change things is by talking about them.
Yes, 100%. I wanted to ask a few questions, just going back to your story. So you were fitting well beforehand, and I mean, kind of sorry to ask, what leg was affected? Your left or right? What one did you have?
My left. Ironically, it was my left leg, because I'm a left legger.
Okay, and so you had no problems with that leg ever in the past? No varicose veins, no
Yep.
aches or nothing?
Yep.
Okay.
Not other than as a scaffolder, you bump and bang and hurt yourself all the time. You know, you kind of, it's one of the, not the perks of the job, so it's just one of these things that happens. You know, you're working with steel, heavy steel. It happens. So you're kind of used to bumps, bangs, and bruises, pulling muscles, sprains, and things like that. But no, you know, never anything of any serious note with my left leg. You know, the real irony is not only my left leg, my right leg. My right leg was my bad knee.
Okay.
Right, because when I was young, I used to do a lot of boxing, roller skating, martial arts. And then when I was 18, I got a cartilage operation,
Right.
and I've had a couple of open the keyhole surgeries on that. You know, so you'd think if there was any real fairness in this life, if you were going to do this, you would take the bad one, you know. So yeah, I laugh at the actual irony of all of some of these things. You know, this really starting off on the 1st of April, April Fool's Day. You know, I look at the humour, and I've got to, because
you got to.
You go, because the reality is when you put all this together and kind of get to even just on a human level physically, where you're going, this is insane. You know, so yeah, you go through all of that. So you look for the humour in it, because you get, it can be a very dark place at times.
100%.
And I've always been of quite I like comedy, I like humour, I like sarcasm, and being a scaffolder, that kind of comes in spades for the most. When you get to know them, yeah, some of the reputation is very much deserved. Some of it's not, shall we say? But the humour with these guys, there is no base level. You know, there is. I have heard scaffolders say things to other scaffolders that, had they said it to me, there would be fists involved to a certain extent. Oh yeah, as I say, you know, there's a line of humour, you just crossed it, not with scaffolders. And you know, and that was evident from, and even from some of my friends in the scooter scene. I've been friends for 20 years and more. You know, when I was in hospital, one of them sent me a text. He said, "I'm absolutely gutted to hear about what's happened to you." You know, and there was a wonderful message in there about something his grandfather, who meant a lot to him, said about life that really lifted me. But the humour bit was not lost. And says, "Well, you're no real loss. You were always a shite northern soul dancer anyway." You know.
Does that help?
Yeah,
Did
of course it helps.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course it helps, because that told me that my mate wasn't treating me any different. And even from before this, you know, the event of not the collapsing, but that week in hospital, because I spent a full 7 days in isolation, and I could only speak to my wife and family through Zoom, not always through Zoom or whatever, but not Zoom, you know, audio FaceTime sort of thing. Yeah. But I was on an extremely high dosage of morphine. So therefore, and I never was a great sleeper, so I was awake all hours. Now, when you're spending 7 days in isolation, time becomes nothing. You don't know what time is. There's a clock in the wall, but you're full of morphine. You know, you've got no concept of what time is and what day it is. And unfortunately, many people receive phone calls at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, all through the evening. And I have apologised, tried to, because you know, they accepted that a lot of it was to do with the drugs and things like that. But there was a lot of humour in those moments. You know, my mate says to me, "Don't worry, I've got your parrot." Another one said, "I've got your pirate suit." So there was a lot of humour, and I was doing it myself. I mean, I phoned one of my mates and said, "What size of shoe are you?" He got the humour, and yes, it did help because that made me know that for some people this wasn't going to change how they were going to be with me, because I knew early on in that 7 days that that was something that was going to be hugely important to me.
Yeah.
And also in that week thought, as I say, and I don't see why I should try and let this change me. I was happy being me, so I need to try and make this fit around me. It's an easy thing to say. Putting into action is not so easy, I'm going to say. Will I be successful? Who knows, but I've got to try.
Yeah, I mean, I always think the ultimate form of freedom is the one that you cultivate within. You could be at peace in war, you could have war inside you on a peaceful day, because it's all about perception at the end of the day. This is going down to the kind of Zen Buddhism and all that kind of stuff. But actually, I think it's important, and we were talking about this a bit earlier before the podcast. I think people are waking up to these things, because when the outside world falls, which it is in a mass scale, and everyone's now realizing the level of corruption and deceit and deception, which we normally in the past only thought of something that happened in the past or in other places or in small areas. But to come to the truth and to physically see it, people are physically unwell, people graphs showing that people are dying more than they should do, and the data. Some people obviously don't want to hear about it and they have no care, and that's okay, that's their world. But with those who've been either injured or not and who have woken, there's an element, there's a period where you're lost, because everything that you've put your personality on and your life dependent on I'm talking about a mental structure, kind of falls. So you're kind of scrambling, and you can be left kind of scrambling and looking for anyone or anything to give you some sort of purpose or meaning. Maybe one good paper on a vaccine, or maybe one good scientist who you can trust says something good about something, and you fall on that, or you accept, wow, okay, we're all deceived, and now we have to move on. But I think that first has to come from really within, and to not really trick yourself, and to be whole, and to look after yourself, your family, and that self-preservation and that want for this peace within is probably more important than outer. And only when this is done, when you want this internal peace, you realize, I want this for others, I want this for my family and friends, and then you go, okay, what can I do? And I think you're probably a good example of that, maybe even if you haven't thought about it or not. And this the fact that you always wanted to be yourself is a rebellious thought, but it's a necessary thought, because it kept you not only alive, but it kept you going, and it keeps you going now. Maybe I don't know. I don't want to put words into your mouth, but saying that, because it's more than just you being injured. It's everything's to be put in place for you. The world conditions you, whether you like it or not. It can be good or bad. But to say no, I want to keep my temple or this peace within me. And you've lost a leg, and you nearly died, and work probably stopped for you, and your social structure changed for you, the way people saw you, everything in a short moment of time changed for you. Your whole concept of you shifted, but you still wanted to keep that kind of deep kind of essence of, actually, no, there's something deeper than my legs, or there's something deeper than this that is me, and you wanted to keep that, which I think that's really really rebellious in a good way. And that cultivating that is really important. Is that something that you would agree with, or not at all?
No, yeah, I think lots of what you said I agree with, and I think I'll kind of quantify it and explain it a bit more if I can. Have I got a lot of anger in me? Of course I have. But whether it be through how I've worked on being myself all these years to try and get to where I wanted to be as me, if that makes any sense, that And having been into boxing and into martial arts, and that sort of not just the physical discipline, but the mental discipline of that gives you an inner strength. And that, especially sort of a martial arts sort of a side of it, the thought of anger as an energy that you need to turn to something positive. If that, to be calm at peace, and it's very, in some ways, yes, that whole sort of a martial arts spiritual side of it, if you want to call it, is very spiritual, and it's about balance and things like that. So I think that's because I've always worked towards that, and maybe that's something I've worked for me. And I think I've also, when I go back to, I think everyone believes that they're different, they're unique, and we all are. But I've always felt that I was different in the sense that I've always been, it's the right reasons. If you do the right thing for the right reasons, you will eventually get the right results for everyone. And that's probably aligns in with me setting what I wanted to be like as a human being, as a man, as I grew up. And as I say, I kind of believe I'd got to there to a certain extent. So that's what kind of gave me the ability to channel the anger, because that's never going to go away. Yeah. And being an East End boy, you have to control that anger, because being physical, I can't really be physical anymore, if that makes any sense. So therefore,
100%.
and over the years, I've realised that if I get angry and lose my temper, all I do is hurt myself. Whether that be physically or mentally or emotionally. And so where possible, that's not a road I ever really want to go down. However, as a human being, as part of the morals and the way I want to live my life, I do have a line.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And
yeah.
On a personal level, and it's just the way I am. I don't say it's right. I don't say it's wrong. I see both sides of it. But if I'm at the level that I am lifting my hands to, or want to lift my hands to someone, then because of the way I've tried to set up my life and live my life, you've went over a line that I've got a further line than most people, if that makes any sense. So therefore, you cross that, then you put me in a position where I've got no choice.
Yeah.
So therefore, it's not condoning violence. That's just the way I am.
Yeah.
And I'm very honest about that. It's all about being true. The truth is so important, whether it's being true to yourself or true to what you believe in. But some people say, it gets boring hearing you telling the same story in so many ways. And I say, well, unfortunately, that's the truth.
That
You
is
can't,
the truth.
the basic facts, you can butter it up as much as you want. It's not going to, I could make it and tell it what you want and make it something that makes you happy to believe. But that's not the truth.
No.
So therefore, if I've lived my life by trying to be honest and true and just being an honest, truthful person, sometimes I'm brutally honest, but that's just part of the quick fire Scots spirit, as it sort of thing. If I see somebody being really rude and nasty, then I'm quite capable as a scaffolder of being really rude and nasty back. It's respect.
Yeah, 100%.
You can ask me the hardest question in the world. If it's done with the right spirit behind it, then I'll never get upset with someone asking that question.
Yeah.
However, if it's done in any other spirit, then don't be surprised when you get the reaction that you expect from me.
Yeah.
Because I don't change and I don't want to change. I'm not perfect. I never will be. But I'm quite happy being me. Because I think for the most part, if I'm angry, I've justified why I'm angry. And I think the only way that I can get through this is by using that anger to try and get the proper help and support. And that's the reality. I didn't set out to be here having conversations, like, you know, with anyone of any, you know, never mind a doctor or a, you know, somebody who went to that level, who's written a book and gave, you know, you don't foresee any of that.
Yeah.
So with that, I want to say that, yeah, there's the people that gives the dogs abuse, the, you know, all the trauma that we could go through. You know, we've seen it even the other day, the comments on poor Gareth Eves' wife, Lisa, you know, oh, that's absolutely, you know, this, we can see the level, so, you know, we don't need to go there. But there's far, far more people like yourself out there. And as I say, I didn't set out to be where I am. I set out to find other people like me. Because you're right, I was told, and I was the first in the world to survive with the level of clots I had. You know, within a short period of time, they classified it as this condition called VITT, vaccine-induced thrombotic thrombopenia. There's a mouthful for a working class guy. And I was told I was extremely rare, which I was for about 2 weeks. You know, I only became aware of that fact because my vascular surgeon told me what he'd explained what the yellow card was, and that he had personally filled it out because this was something, you know, and that's how I knew what a yellow card was, and he showed me where it was because I didn't know any of this. And within 2 weeks of seeing at that point, which was a weekly updated yellow card of what was going to be reported, that I could see that there were more than just fucking one. There was several hundred at that point. And obviously, how do you get hold? How do you reach out to people that you don't know? So I took to social media, and for a long time, till that post in December, which sparked us, our conversation, I was screaming into the wind, trying to find people like me, trying to help, and nobody was listening. That's how it felt. And round about the December time, the twin tweet that I put on, that's on my Twitter feed, I'd been putting posts out that for 9 months. And I don't know what happened, why this one did what it did, but well, it went from, I had 137 something followers to like 10,000 in a weekend. Now, you know yourself, for everything that you on particularly Twitter, you get a notification if it's shared, liked, or retweeted. So you can imagine one of these. It hit 1 million at one point. When it went to 2 million eventually, but when it hit the first million, that's 1 million notifications. Twitter, and this is the best way I can explain it, was like looking at a fruit machine. My timeline was just going like a fruit machine. My shares, likes, hearts, retweets. And when I went into the notifications, it was like 500 notifications. I would clear it, thinking I can go back to them. And as soon as I hit clear, there'd been another 400. And that went on for the better part of a week, but for a full weekend, it was insane. And I thought, what have I done? I've broken something, you know. And along the way, it's ended up being kind of where we are now, which is a strange place for me. You know, I never expected in any walk of life to be not having to do, but doing forewords for books, doing inaugural podcasts, doing live interviews, doing GB News, and meeting some wonderful people from every walk of life, even up to those that are very well known in this life. Some wonderful people. Matt Letizia has been a really good supportive friend, as his wife, and you know, John. There's so many names I can mention that I'm very wary. I don't want to mention names because these people have given me a wonderful comfort, and I never want to embarrass them in many ways, so certainly. But Matt is particularly one gentleman that is, and there's a lady just now. She's the lady Fiona who's organising this whole Together movement for the month of January. The Truth Be Told. And she did a phenomenal job in Edinburgh on Saturday. And I'm going down to London on the 21st of January for the Truth Be Told.
I'll be there.
Good, because then we can actually get a good bear hug. I became a bear hug guy. I never was.
Yeah, same.
And I think that's one of the things that's pleasantly surprised me about myself, because I never was a hug. My kids still say it. They used to come over for hugs, and it's not that I didn't love them. I'm not.
You're not a hugger, no, really.
Yeah, my mother. It's not. I think my mother wasn't a hugger. But I didn't need the hugs to know that she loved me. If that made any sense, maybe I was the same in certain ways, but no, that's gone now. Everybody gets a hug. You've got to get a hug, because you never know when your last hug's going to be. And hey, they're free. And that's what I found. I think all the things in life that are really, really good for you, a lot of them are free. And so there, I've got huge hope for where we are now and where we're going. I think it's going to fall apart overnight and all, but I'm not naive. This could take years, and it will in many ways, for lots of things to actually work out to get the proper help and support for people like us. That we know that, because governments ain't going to they don't do anything quickly unless it suits them. Which we've we saw that historically, cyclic, that over certainly the last 60 years, and maybe longer, but we certainly know that the game has been rigged against common man to a certain extent. I think that's the biggest awareness that the public are most shocked by. You're right. We're brought up to think we're all bits of rebels and that there's a bit of corruption, but it's happening mostly elsewhere. None of us thought it was on the levels that we are witnessing. Whether that be monetarily, medically, in any other shape, or even media-wise. You're aware just how deep some of it goes, especially, people like myself who wanted to find people like me and wanted to let people know that there is a problem with these things. I don't want anybody. I never want another human being to go through what I went through. So, you try and do the right thing and reach out to mainstream media. And yeah, that was a tough old test of your sanity, because you became this voice that was in a storm shouting at the wind. None of them replied, and I'm talking every mainstream media channel in the world, every so-called independent journalist in the world has all been tagged on social media, Twitter. Not because I want to be famous. It's not about me. This is trying to stop something happening. And very few, in fact, none of them did. I came out of the hospital, and a friend who's a photographer who took photographs of myself and a couple of mates on scooters 7 or 8 years previously, and he'd kept in touch, he'd heard what happened to me. And he offered to take some photographs of me. You'll see it's in my profile picture that I use sitting on my scooter. And he said, I do independently try and get stories for some mainstream media. And so to raise awareness, and I did an article, and the article came out, and it was 1 in a million, inspiration, amputee urges everyone to keep taking the vaccine. You've got no idea the mental effect that had on me. And you can imagine the abuse that has been directed at me. Now, as it turned out over the course of this journey, I'm now in touch with many people who have lost a loved one or have been damaged and way beyond repair. Medically confirmed, like myself, so there's no conspiracy, there's no made up, solely attributed to what's happened medically. And every one of us, some had been other mainstream, BBC particular, some Sky, some other, whatever, so-called mainstream media outlet, every one of them, it came out the same story. Didn't want to put anyone off taking the vaccines, urges the vaccines are safe, admits that it's rare, extremely rare. And to the level that a journalist from UK Column News reached out to me privately and said he'd become across several of us who had been treated the exact same way. Was this something that was a bit more nefarious looking? And he did the most, at that point, and still to this day, I would think in many ways, the most in-depth article on VITT that's out there. And it solely was done to counteract and let you see the true story of that article. And I still have to defend it, even up to today, yesterday. And this is what we're fighting against. More and more people are becoming aware. Will I ever do an article with the BBC? I have said this numerous times. Only if it's live and I have the cut button. Because we've shown that all we want is, I'm not saying every single event on the yellow card and every single death on it is vaccine related. But there's something going on that's a problem. I can prove they're not safe and effective just with I've been classified with a medical condition solely caused by a vaccine. The UK government have actually acknowledged and accepted that, as we know through the vaccine damage payment system, which is, the reality is the success rate on that is 1.7%. That's not changed, wow. And the numbers that are now going through that, and people, it took me 18 months, and you saw how much I was so vocal, so screaming, trying to get something resolved with this in this department of the government. Was that unique? No. Every single one of us has been blocked, told that we didn't need any more medical records, then 6 months later saying, we've not got your medical records. Well, you told us that you had them, or we've lost them. You've got no idea in the background how many people are fighting and getting the runaround with this so-called department that was set up and reformed, when they moved it from the DWP to the National Health Service Business Services. It's an absolute shambles.
Sounds like it. And you're kind of playing with people's lives, aren't you?
I was within a short period of time of losing my home. And I know that there are others that have lost their home.
Wow.
Because there was nothing put in place to support it going wrong other than basic state benefits. Now, basic state benefits and PIP or disablement, whatever you want to call it, while it's something that I can't live without, it's not what I was. I had a mortgage and built in debt and like everyone else, and still have, I've got a house that now needs massively adapted. I've not got a job. I've got no money. And how does that, so you're caught in this vicious circle. And again, I don't say it because it's just me. If I was the single person going through this, that would be a horrific tragedy in its own. But every single one of us are in the same place. And that is not a tragedy, that's a travesty.
100%.
And that's where, even though I was the first living person acknowledged by the UK government to have this condition, that, even that didn't appease people. You know, I was called a grifter as yesterday. You know,
Yeah. And me too.
and you're like, it's the people you go, are you really? What kind of logic are you looking at that you think losing a leg is grifting?
It's
You
a
know,
reflection of them, isn't it? It's a reflection of
yeah,
their.
you know, I'm on here screaming about I need help and support, not
Yeah.
just spiritually, mentally, also financially,
Mm.
not just me, all of us, you know. So if I'm earning money out of this, or if, you know, or you're just doing it to be famous, are you
So many other
fucking,
ways.
you know,
So
are
many
you
other
fucking
ways.
serious? Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know anybody on the planet that thought, you know what, this is going to make me fucking famous. I'll go for this.
Yeah. I mean, the level of gaslighting is just horrendous. It pains me because I always I try to put myself in people's shoes. So I go, you know, some people like you have lost a limb, legs. Others have been paralyzed. Others have had heart conditions where they can't leave their bedrooms. So that's physical. So they're already in physical pain and they want that to stop. But on top of this, it's meant that they have no financial support usually, or very minimal. Socially, it's difficult because it's such a taboo subject still. There can be, if your family isn't on board, it becomes extremely difficult. It can become very lonely. There's a mental health aspect, you know, all this affects your brain. So this is, and it's a global issue where a lot of people are feeling the same. And because you're not alone in it, sometimes I feel like, do people feel that they are going crazy? Like, I feel like sometimes you go, wait, is this just me, or is this actually happening? Because there's a problem which is caused by, let's say, the government agencies or the people. You know, they promoted this thing. It's a medical procedure, and all medical procedures have side effects, or they can do. So obviously, some people, even if it was the perfect vaccine, would have side effects, one or two, let's say.
Yes.
But to just ignore, and not even ignore, to halter and to put barriers so these people can't get justice. It's not like we can't do anything else. We just want to carry on with our lives. Or you know, people who are vaccinated want to carry on with your lives. And that's because it's bad enough in itself. And what I get even more surprised, and I know why it happens, but the fact that the layman or someone in the public field on Twitter or something like that will call someone a grifter or kind of abuse individuals just to seek help, I find extremely worrying. It's just like if someone had cancer and they couldn't find help, you wouldn't be doing the same thing. Or someone had a heart condition, a heart attack, or even self-induced mental health conditions or kind of drug abuse issues. That's extremely rude, because you would understand that it's not the individual's fault. You know, we as a society should help each other. But it just seems like this topic, it just seems like
it's
so
toxic.
divisive. Yeah, it's toxic. It's extremely toxic.
And I'll I'm so glad you kind of brought this up, because it brings up something that is very close to me. You're right, the impacts of what words can be to another human being. Many of us, in some ways, are going through, even though it's very publicly known, you are going through something alone, because it's unique to you. And that's a dark and lonely place to be in any way, shape or form. And you add to that the gaslighting, whether it be medically, governmentally or publicly. And suddenly people are on social media screaming for help because they've got nowhere else to go. And then they feel that social media is shutting them, so therefore they are alone. And it brings you to the topic of which goes from any traumatic event in any human being, irrespective of what it is, has an impact. If that impact is not acknowledged, treated, or if it's denied or shut down, it becomes depression. If that's not acknowledged and treated now, you know where this goes. It goes to PTSD. We have lost 7 people to suicide. Some of them because they just couldn't take the pain anymore, because medically they were in that much pain. Some of them is because of what was said to them by other people.
Mm.
And I think if we don't know the real reasons why I'm still here, one of them is that I take a very personal thought in of the 80. I talk about the VITs of the 81 deaths to VIT, the fatalities. Most of I know the families, as I say, of these wonderful human beings that I never had the pleasure of meeting. They don't have a voice anymore.
Mm.
I do.
Mm.
And I do take that responsibility personally, that someone has to be their voice. And I really should be one of them.
Yeah.
So therefore I'm not, so therefore I will be their voice.
Mm.
That includes those that get to the stage where they have had enough. And when you look at that bigger picture, I'm not justifying it, but we can understand why they went to that level. Because it is very, very difficult when you're in an already dark place, for the one chink of light that you thought was your avenue of getting some kind of acknowledgement is closed, and you're left with one door. Well, I'm sorry if I have to spend the rest of my days shaming people, if that's the word, talking about a subject that shouldn't be talked about. And it wasn't just down to these vaccines. I'm talking about people that lost their lives and took their lives through lockdown. Because you're right, the mental impacts of this, I think it's going to genuinely take decades and generations to actually, to if it ever will be fixed proper, back to the life before. That's one of the heartbreaks I do genuinely feel. I grew up in a generation where I had a freedom, the best of all freedoms, from, I was born in the 60s. Granted, early 60s, 64, I'm not as young as I look. To now that I had a freedom of many things in life that will never come back. And I think that's one of the real big heartaches for me, that people won't ever get that freedom that I had, because life has changed, the society has changed. I think you're right. We're at a stage that I do believe is pivotal for humanity. But beyond the who did what, why they did it, why they didn't do it, or why they didn't get whatever, we're way beyond that now. We're now at a stage where we now see an awful lot of these things that don't add up and need to be resolved. And it's in so many levels. People say to me, what is it your goal? What is it you're trying to achieve by what you're doing? Well, first and foremost, it's finding proper help and support for people like me and everybody else that's injured, and that's even just medical. That's the first and foremost. Secondly, is to stop anybody else being in the same position as me, because I don't know how I've survived this and coped mentally. So therefore, I've got to look at how the others, because it's a hard place to be at times. So you've got that element of it, and I forgot where I was going there. Is the brain fog?
No, I think you're hitting the nail on the head, really, because I have always been, I can only talk from my own experience, someone who likes to go into the root causes of things, because I feel like everything else is just a manifestation of the root cause, whether it's a problem or a good thing. So even in healthcare, I would always go, we're not treating people if we're giving them medication until they die, because the root cause hasn't been affected, it hasn't been dealt with, right? But I've also looked into, I really enjoy learning and studying, and I look into history, and I really enjoy history and psychology, and I go, wars repeat, and we as man suffer and suffer until we die. Why is that? Because we say history is important, so we learn from it, but we haven't, and we never will. because there's something else we're not really looking into. And I think at this moment in time, I've been frustrated for the last 3 years. First frustrated because I was like confused as to why my superiors or medical superiors at the time weren't thinking like me and weren't looking at natural immunity, and why did everyone need a jab, because I looked at the studies of 2020 and I was like, hold on, this doesn't make any sense. Why does everyone need it? Because a lot of people were already kind of immune and all this stuff. Okay, but I was like, okay, maybe I don't know something that they do. And then I worked in the front lines of COVID. I worked in A&E. I've worked also in A&E, but during the pandemic in pediatrics, in general practice, and in mental health. So I saw the whole spectrum of what lockdowns were doing to all ages. So then I saw on Twitter when other people were saying things like children need to get vaccinated because they have risk of COVID, and I was like, but I only saw one child, and they were well afterwards in the whole second peak. So I was like, this doesn't add up. So now there's a difference between real life data and scientific data. Real life you can't manipulate, you see with your eyes, and science you can. So I was deconstructing my whole structure of medicine, and then that went on. But really, what really hurt me was no one really stood up in the medical profession. No one in healthcare internationally. Yes, a handful did. Okay, I could probably name 15 internationally, but it's our duty to look after people. It's literally our job. That's it. It's not to fix the plumbing. It's not to taxi people here and there to the airport. We are trained to do no harm, number one, and to treat people with respect and ethically. That is it. That's the role of a doctor. So when I was having these conversations around the time I was leaving, and I was just asking, like, why aren't we doing our jobs?
Yeah, it's a strange one, because you're right. How do we explain the fact that there's so many still?
Yeah, exactly.
Not looking at it. And you mentioned something that, as I said, that what was it I'm trying to achieve, that then I could forgot where I was going. And so first and foremost, help and support, stop this happening to other people. And my other priority, as you mentioned it there, is the level of what they want the children. Now, I say this a lot, I can't tell you what to do as an adult. You've got a brain, or you do what's right for you. Whatever that may be, I'll support you, because that's what you believe is the right decision for you, even if it's not what I would do, because that's democracy. And I'll never tell you what to do. Children's a different story. As a parent, part of our job is to protect them and safeguard them. And as a parent, you've got certain duties of care. That's my belief. And part of that is you've got a duty of care, to have a look and ask some pertinent questions. And there's 3 questions that I say all the time. 1, can you supply the independently verified safety data for children? 2, will the government support my child for life should it go wrong? 3, will the pharmaceutical company support my child for life should it go wrong? And as a parent, that's 3 questions are not difficult. And it's a straightforward, easy answer. And if the answer is no to any of them, we have to really consider what's happening. And the reality is we know the answer is no. All 3. And also that's one argument that's logic, that's common sense to me. Therefore, it's the right thing to do. And the second one is scientifically. There's 99.97% chance of having no problem with what this virus, but that's what everyone's calling it, what it is. However, they do have nearly a 3% chance of taking an adverse reaction from one of these test vaccines. So why would you do that to your child?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I even wrote a letter to the GMC, so the General Medical Council. I don't know if you know, it was my old previous Twitter account, and when the decision to vaccinate children in the UK, they were talking about it and was coming ahead, I couldn't, I had to do something about it. So I wrote a letter to the GMC, who are an organization who are supposed to protect patients from doctors, pretty much.
Yeah.
So I went for them. It was risky because I was still working, and they could obviously say what I was doing was kind of spreading misinformation, and they could have blocked me, or they could have stopped my license. But I did it in a scientific way. I gave all the evidence, I referenced it all, and I actually put their definition of a good doctor, what they should do, in the letter. And I put it as an open letter on my platform, and people started to actually kind of sign it. That letter got taken down by their website, and you later on found out it was run by the Gates Foundation. And the GMC replied a few days later with a very generic response, and I was like, these are children's lives we're talking about. It's not a small issue like, a small side effect or reflux or anything like that. It's an unnecessary intervention into children that it goes against everything. It goes against every single thing, and no one, again, I still don't understand why people aren't in the medical field standing up for their patients. But that has to be done. I think doctors have to recognize this.
I think there's various reasons for why there's not more medical professionals speaking out. I'll cover some of them. I think some genuinely believe that nothing this nefarious could actually happen, which is understandable. Some of them, that's a career that they love to a certain extent. They believe they love, and therefore, they have a family, mortgage, kids, and understand that to a certain extent. Some of them know that if they do speak out, they're out of a job. That's part of it. And it's not just out of a job, they're getting a license revoked and these kind of things. They're now talking about getting psychiatric treatment for their, we've seen the reality. But there's another element that nobody wants to talk about. And I want to talk about those people. These are the people, the doctors and the medical professions, who get £12.80 for writing a prescription, every prescription, if they were in their own surgery, and up to £15 if they're in one of these centres. Some of these doctors earned in excess of £60,000 in 1 week. So therefore, why would they come out and say, oh, I took money to harm people? That's why we're getting a lot of them. There's another element that we talk about, the informed consent, which we clearly know has been broken. They do no harm, we clearly know. But in some cases, it's clearly been broken. But there's another part, and you'll be able to tell me this more than my understanding, as part of your oath that you're signing and buying into, is that you agree to keep yourself up to date with your medical practice, your knowledge. Now, irrespective if you think, if we go down and say the avenue, Alex, you're very rare and extremely rare. Okay, I'll take your argument. What did you put in place, and what are you putting in place, and when will you put it in place to help those people that are extremely rare? Because the reality is you've put absolutely nothing in place other than basic state benefits that took me 10 months to get, and an archaic system from the 70s that you added 2 words to. Now, I've said this for nearly 2 years. You've added 2 words, COVID-19 vaccines, to an old 1979 policy. Now, if I was disinformation and I was misinformation, I would be shot down for that statement if it wasn't 100% accurate. And the reality is, I haven't. So we know that. And we know that when it all, and the thing is, what do we do now?
Yeah. That's what we were getting to. I think we're very similar, even though we have different stories. I think we understand, we move on probably quicker than others, or the mass, let's say. And our problem is that we're always trying to get people on the same team for the same wavelength, because we understand that if not, it's going to be an even bigger problem. And this is why I'm setting up conversations like the book with evidence, with stories, and you and your Twitter, because firstly, people need to know this is real. You can't ignore it. This is happening, whether it's a serious injury or not serious injury. I hate the term extremely rare when describing a thing, because a side effect is 50-50. You would have a side effect or don't. And for the person who has the side effect, it's not rare.
100%.
It's literally.
It's 100%. You know,
100%.
You know, and you know, if you're going to call me extremely rare, define it by numbers. You know, because if you want to say I'm extremely rare, well, I'm going to say I don't care what number you want to give. 445 people just for one single condition is not quite extremely rare.
No.
You're going by a full population. That's not fair. What you have to do is go by the population of people that's been vaccinated. That's a totally different percentage now, isn't it? You know, also, stats and damn fucking lies.
Yeah. I mean, I think also if you were, let's say you were 1 in a million, instead of going, oh, you're extremely rare and ignore you, I would be like, why did you, out of every single person who got it, why did you, and not just because vaccine, maybe it's your genetics. It'll be interesting to find out. So no one else who's extremely rare.
Well, we always thought that the yellow card, that takes on awful lot of abuse. And what people don't understand is that that's not a public thing that was set up. That's the government's own body's organisation, and the way that they did this. So therefore, they thought about how this was going to work, and this is what they set up. And they accept themselves that it's so unwieldy that it's up to 10% misreported. So the numbers that they're are absolutely horrific, are a fraction of what we know is the probable reality. So but that's neither here nor there. That's an indication that there's a signal to the m-RNA that there's possibly a problem. Because this, if we go by the top bodies, these are the people that regulate the health authority. What do? You would think, if, as you say, 1 in a million, so rare, you would want to know more why this happened. Would I not be, given that I was the first in the world to survive with the level of this, would I not be the first person you really want to speak to? Or not speak to, but get involved, find out, you're right, is there something in him that's unique to everyone else or that we've never seen before? Because VITT was something that was never seen before at a level it was never seen before. As you know, white blood cells, red blood cells, hemoglobin, plasma, PF4 antibodies under that. And that's why they didn't realise what VITT was, because nobody would have went under that level to antibody. You know, this is a whole new, different generation of stuff. You know, we're now going deeper. You're now at antibody level. They didn't think to look there. Why would they?
I mean,
you know, and that's the kind of scope you're looking at, and you're saying, right, so therefore you've went to this level to create this thing. And part of the gaslighting is that doctors sometimes don't want to admit they're wrong because there's I mentioned arrogance in scaffolders. There's an arrogance in the medical profession. Not all of them, but there is, you know, and to a certain extent, we're responsible for that arrogance because we put them on a pedestal that we should never have put them on. And that's something that history will have to redress, you know, and we have to change to make things the proper healthcare. Because you're right, they're not treating the problem. You know, they're treating it with that they're holding it at bay with medication that is not always good for us.
No, and regardless of that, just the ethics of informed consent. I wrote. Not one single person in the world has been properly consented, not informed with regards to this, because we have no data. We have no long-term data. So unless unless a doctor told you, I have no idea what this does to your body in 10 years' time, would you like it anyway? It might not. It doesn't reduce it doesn't reduce a transmission, and the data around severity is here. We don't know, and it also does other things to your body, which are all mainly negative, and we don't know the long-term effects. If then they said that, and then you accept it, fair enough. But I don't think anyone would accept in any intervention if someone said it's going to make you unwell and you don't need it. So no one has been consented, probably.
No, you're right, because you're right. If we go with just that basic informed consent, right? Obviously, I talk about AstraZeneca because that's the one that I know more about for obvious reasons. That's the one that affected me. That had we don't need to name the names, because I actually think there will be cases where these people will be in court trying to justify what they said on screen. Many of them, and that's not just politicians for that matter. I'm not going to go into name names because that just opens up a can of worms. But the reality is, it's 100% safe and effective. Now, that's not just people saying that. There's paperwork. It's undeniable, irrefutable out there that that's how what it was said. It was 100% safe and effective. We now know that they knew that wasn't the case. Because particularly with AstraZeneca, because the adrenalist vector they used in this thing, they knew 20 years ago it was causing clotting issues. That report's out there. That report has been requested by a couple of people over the last couple of years, and they're still fighting to get it because the report's there. So therefore they knew then that it was causing this possible problem and didn't do anything to change it. So therefore it wasn't 100% safe and effective. And how could they know?
Yes, exactly.
There was no human trials with AstraZeneca in the UK.
No.
They did 2 animal trials, and every animal had to be humanely destroyed. Again, this is not stuff I'm making up. You know this. This is all factual stuff. So therefore, there was no informed consent.
No, there wasn't.
And the risk-benefit ratio was clearly skewed. It's 100% safe and effective. Now, clearly, I think part of the problem society is really struggling with is they never thought a government or a health medical professions would actually do something this way.
100%, yeah.
So therefore, they struggle to believe people like me.
100%. I mean, firstly, I wanted to point, nothing in life is 100% safe and effective. So already that should ring kind of, you should be thinking, hold on, this doesn't make any sense. If paracetamol isn't 100% safe and effective, that's one of the safest medications.
Yeah, and I think part is I had a phone call and I switched off and I've lost my train of thought. What you said something that I wanted to.
I was like, nothing is 100% safe and effective, and the fact that they said that was a concern. I mean, to me anyway, it was like, hold on, that makes no sense whatsoever. Nothing, even if you had no trials, even if you had nothing to.
And I think that's where the biggest problem is that you're right. Some people knew a long time ago that didn't add up, and like many of us have suffered horrific mental trauma for standing out and saying what they believe and things like that. But the reality is that we can't see just how bad it's been. And when you kind of realise that this is a massive problem, and they knew it was a massive problem, and it's become very obvious this is not about health anymore. For me, that's not where I was, and many of us weren't. As I said before, that I was out gigs 4 or 5 nights a week, out my scooter 2 nights a week. I was maybe home 1 night a week. The nearest I was to looking at what was going on in the real world, not mainstream media, was YouTube, looking at UFO videos to a certain extent. And I think that I'm very similar to lots of the general public in that factor. And what we have had to process in the last 18 months, I can understand why there's such a mental overload that we're all struggling with. Now, I've received psychological support for what's happened. I will receive further psychological support for what's happened. And it's likely that I will, for the rest of my life, will have psychological support. Because I'm going to need it. Because the human mind wasn't designed to take what this has been the last 18 months. You know, you're right, because just the physical trauma alone is a hard thing to do, you know, and never mind everything else. It's funny, I got an email this morning, I reached out. I know when I'm having a place where you need to process this, or you need to get the proper help for this. I'm very aware that because of how fragile I am in many ways, I have to take on board all the kind of warning signals that I feel myself. Because if I don't do that, I could, you know. So I reached out to the psychologist that gave me the psychological support, who was a wonderful psychologist, because we didn't talk about what happened to me. It wasn't about that. That didn't. I get more out of the fact that he was my hour a week that I could go to and talk about Alex' previous life, because he's got a love of music and guitars and things like that. So we spoke about my scooter days and things like that. So it was nothing to. I saw that as an hour out of the world of madness, and it did me a world of good. And that was a charity called Thrombosis UK, who offered all the VITT's psychological support, which was, I now realise, was so vitally important to so many of us, and that's the reason why many of us are actually still walking and breathing, not walking and breathing, you know what I mean, still here. But so there's a couple of things that's going on that I know I need to process. So I kind of reached out to Paul, but part of it, and he answered me straight away. I know he's answered me, but I've not had the time to read the email. But what was getting to the point I was getting to was that he, in the very first conversation, said something to me that has probably kept me, as not always perfectly balanced, but and where I am to a certain extent. He said, "You will visit every single emotion you can imagine, some that you can't imagine. That's normal. It's okay. You will visit these places. That's absolutely fine. However, it's when you stay in them too long that it's not good for you." And that struck a chord with me, that I've realised, yeah, you would love to bottle this up, put it into something and lock it away somewhere forever, all that, what you've been through and what you've still been through, you would love to do that, but it's still going to be there. And if my mum thinks I'm the most thorn, stubborn, awkward bastard she's ever clapped eyes on, then I have to be aware that if that's still going to be there, I need to deal with it. So I know sometimes I do have to visit these very dark places, not through choice, because I have to start processing some of whatever that is at that particular time, because I can't keep trying to lock it away. So therefore, and if you'd have said to me a year ago that's something that I would have been actively looking at, thinking about, I'd have said, nah, no me. Not because I think I'm any different from anyone else. It's just because of what's happened in many ways, I've lost every bit of faith and respect in any kind of profession, irrespective of what it is. And I kind of touched on earlier on, I've got huge amount of respect for people that do what they say they're going to do. Everyone can talk the talk, not everyone can walk the walk. And maybe that's part of the fact that because I know as a scaffolder, that's a very rare breed. Physically, it's a very rare breed to do that kind of job, and they take a pride in the fact that they can talk the talk and walk the walk. And sometimes that arrogance is justified. If that, so I get it. So you know, but the other side of it is that you've got to be able, if you, and I find it now that that's who I find that now I don't trust anyone till they give me reason to trust them, and when once I trust them, I trust them until they give me a reason not to trust them, and until then, you know, is that cynical? Yeah, I suppose that's a part of that self-survival, isn't it?
Yeah.
But what it does do is it means that you end up with a wonderful network of people who are the people that walk the walk and talk the talk.
Yes, 100% get you. Same. I have to say that's the way I'm looking at life now as well. And just to touch up on the fact that you said you had this kind of psychological help, and actually the past few years has kind of driven you into this position where you needed it, but also self-discovery and sitting with, being vulnerable with these emotions that you would maybe normally not know existed, or not, you know, realize it's there, or maybe ran away from. But I think the seeing or the appreciating or just observing that you have these is in itself empowering, and it stops it.
Oh yeah.
Or reduces it, you know, like, because if you keep it running away, it still exists. But if you sit with it, you go, okay, it's there. Now what can I do about it? If you can't do anything about it, why worry? And this goes back to your mother, and how she said, if you can't fix it, why are you worrying about it? If you can fix it, like, it's this in life. I think that's the only really two options. And again, not talk about me, but I think again we're extremely similar in our thinking. I was getting frustrated. I was like saying previously, frustrated about everything, everyone, and I was becoming difficult to be around. I think because I was understanding the massive implications of everything, but people around me weren't. Like, you know, girlfriend and family, they weren't getting it. And fair enough. So I was like, how can I portray my message so people can get it, and I can just release this energy I have inside me and help people in the same way. So I said, okay, this is how we fix it, by talking, making art, making books, you know, non-stop talking about it, and that's the only way. And I think, yeah, I'm just saying it because I feel like you have very similar kind of energies to me. Your mentality is very similar, or certain aspects. The fact that, well, I mean, it's very commendable after you had your leg amputated. For some people, that would be it. That's their life gone. And you know, you played sports. You was a scaffold. You were active. You like to go on your moped. So this must have shifted.
Don't call it a moped.
Oh, sorry, not moped. A Vespa.
You cause war. No, you're right. It's no one should go through this in many ways, but there is so much positives that we have to look at. What has been very evident is that there's far more wonderful, caring, passionate, compassionate human beings out there than people realise. So therefore, yes, that gives me lots of motivation to keep doing whatever it is. You know, as I said, you didn't set out to be here. I certainly not in any imagination could I expect to be here. But you're right, you know, I can't change that. So I either try and fix it, as my mother said, you know, deal with it or don't. So I'm trying to deal with it. Am I getting it right? I honestly don't know, because the reality is, I don't, you know, I'm winging this. I have no idea what's going on here, because no one expect, you know, my reality is gone 100 degrees, but some of it's not all negative. That's what I'm trying to sort of say. Yeah, you could sit and look at all the dark side, and it's very dark, but very horrible. But there's lots of positives. You know, I've met some of the, as I say, some of the most bravest, compassionate, courageous, wonderful people who have endured just as much as I have in many ways. In some cases, I think more. And, you know, people say you're a warrior and you're this and all the rest of it. No, I'm just a human being that I think's standing up for what I think's right,
Mhm.
and I'm not alone.
Mhm.
I've just happened to be somebody that people have thought, yeah, he's, I've got a story. That's really it. What it is it's a horrific story that
Mm.
should be told, just for
100%.
so many reasons. Not all of them negative reasons, some of them to show that there is lots of good in this life, whatever.
Yeah.
But if you've got to look for it,
Yes. 100%.
I was asked the question, would I wish on anyone else? And I said no. And I thought about it. And in some ways, it's a strange thing to say, but I've had a lot of time to think about a lot of this. In some ways, because of the way maybe I was mentally in my life, it's better that this has happened to me.
Mm. Yeah.
Because so many people just maybe wouldn't have.
Understanding.
And I'm not saying that I'm going to survive this. I'm not saying that because we don't know the truth. We don't know that tomorrow could be a different day. And I don't mean that I mean mentally and things like that, because we're very fragile, aren't we? So yeah, I'm trying to fix what's broken. Not all of that's ever going to be fixed, let's be honest. That's never going to change, but it's the same physically. So therefore you try and work with what's positive. And there is lots of goodness that's came out of this. If I have anything I have said or done has in any way helped anyone, no matter what way, then at least that's a small whatever for my comfort that is. But it is to me. I'm not any. I really genuinely believe I'm not any different. I'm not anything special. I'm just a working class guy for the East End of Glasgow who has got through this shit show everybody else as best as they can, and I genuinely mean that. And I always say, you don't know how strong you are, so songs are all you've got. Because that I did say that to myself on the 4th of April, that you're going to have to be stronger than you've ever been before if you want to try and A, survive this, and B, try and get through it. And all of us have that inside us.
100%.
Some find it very early in life, and we see these people, and we admire them for having the strength of convictions to stand by their word and their honour. So there's lots of us out there, and that's what we want to try and be. Sometimes this is bigger than you and bigger than me, and I suppose that's what I'm trying to say in many ways. Yeah, while I am me, Alex Mitchell, and I'm unique in being me, I'm just one of many that need the same help and support. That some of them just don't feel strong enough right now, and I understand that because it's a difficult place to be. And the minute you put the minute you put your head above that parapet, there is no going back under it. And I would love to say that in many ways, I would like to slide into anonymity, because the reality is, as a human being, you don't want to be public. This is the last thing you want to be. You want to be in a corner to a certain extent, hiding away from the world. And in many ways, that's what I would love to do, but I now accept that I don't think that choice is mine anymore. And that's what I'm saying. I'm winging this. I haven't a clue. I don't have a plan, an agenda. I'm making this shit up I don't mean I'm making what I'm saying up as I go. I'm making up how this process is going. Because I was never designed to be here.
Well, I don't think anyone is, because there is no plan. So the only plan is what we do now, and whatever. Because I think you would agree that we don't do it for ourselves. We do it for other people. I'm living for other people, and whether it's my children that I haven't had yet, or the future, or other people in my position, or people like you, and others who are injured or who might become unwell later on. I think we both, and people in our similar mindset and journey, don't do it. There's nothing in our lives that we're doing it for, because we're not getting these material things that people think we are. We're doing it for a deeper purpose, I think. And I think you can wing it, because if you just listen to what you feel is right, then I think that's the best way to approach things, because no one knows the future, and we're shaping it, and only man can shape future, not governments, nothing like that. Only we can invent, we can come together, we can converse. We invented the plane and the bridge. It wasn't a government that invented the plane, the bridge, or the rocket, anything like that. So it's man, it's humankind. And we're at the stage, like we said before, previously, I think we're at a crossroads, of like a spiritual crossroads at a mass scale, where you have those who are aware of the things that are going on. Some do, there's different extents to of this awareness, but once you're aware, you can't not be aware. It's like you're either aware or not. There's another group who don't want to be, or will never be, or who might be later on, but it's they're both going in kind of opposite directions internally. And I think eventually the ones with the light, let's say light in terms of, to kind of conceptualize it, will always help, because one is mainly out of love, and one is mainly out of fear. And eventually I hope that these individuals will, because we want to help everyone, the world will just get better in, I don't know how many years long, but that's my hope anyway.
I agree with you. If I didn't believe wholeheartedly with every bit of the arm that there is a better way, a better place that we can get to, I gave up a long time ago.
Yeah.
And if I'm being honest, as opposed to the longer this goes on, the more disheartened I'm getting. It's the opposite, and that's not something I was kind of expecting. The longer this seems to have went on, the more heartened I am by what I see is coming together. Yeah, we can talk about how bad it's going to get, and let's not kid ourselves. The impacts of what's happened, the deaths and the injuries, unfortunately, the real numbers, when they do come out, that's the dark period. I'm not talking. I mean, we're going to have to go through that process as a humanity. We have to, because we keep rewriting history, but we keep rewriting history to suit a narrative that is not the real history, if that makes any sense. That has to change. History be exactly what it is, accurate, the truth. And that's the thing, because the truth doesn't change. So let's just keep telling the truth. There's many other things that we could say is going on in the world, but we can't prove. We might suspect. So if we can't prove it, that brings me to this. We get the standard answer from particularly the government and the medical professionals that's not prepared to listen to the whole picture, that everything's fine and everything's going to be fine. And you're saying, but you're unaware that when all this comes out, and it's getting to the stage where it's beyond. Even that's the thing I've noticed since the 1st of January this year, is the general public. I'm not constantly getting I've had two, and that, what you're seeing, and you see it as well, is that I know 4 people that said these, and 2 of them having issues, and 1's having this. Many people. I'm not saying, I hate the word connecting the dots to a certain extent, but that's kind of being aware that, hold on, this isn't a scale that we can't believe is precedented.
Mm.
But I do believe, and I'm seeing that it's very powerful. What I felt in the last few days. Will that mean it's going to end tomorrow? No, is it going? No, it's not. Let's not be naive. I'm not naive enough to think that someday I'm going to be standing in a court of law with a big victory sign saying we won. I'm not out to say that. I'm out to say let's change what is to make what if there is these viruses and it has to be something to counteract them. Let's make them safe and effective properly for the right reasons. Let's do it right. I've had every so-called vaccination known to man up to now. Some that I didn't need, for holidays or for certain particular things that I was involved in. I don't mean that nefarious. I mean, I used to work with profoundly disabled adults voluntary. So I had to have working with bodily fluids, you can understand. So
Epi and stuff like that,
yeah. So these were vaccines that I didn't need to a certain extent. But so, to get that term of saying I'm against them, no, I'm not. I wasn't. Am I now? Yes, particularly these ones, because we now know that there's massive issues with them. But also, what I have found out that probably is that shock of how nefarious sometimes it can be, that when I looked at particularly what's going wrong with myself, and I looked at these kind of things cyclically, that we go back to thalidomide, and we can see thalidomide, AIDS, haemophilia, the list goes on and on and on, right down to these three that historically there's always been a problem.
Yes. So it's the issue of man, isn't it? It's a fundamental.
But we were never allowed. Yeah, and the problem was that now technology, particularly social media, that has been the one plus, if nothing else, is that people are now seeing the reality. That this has been going on for years and years. Why, I didn't know, and why would I know? Why would I want to know that Pfizer and AstraZeneca are the two most fined companies in the world? That, and when we look through, they've actually been fined for bribing government officials, misleading data, and we now know, given the Pfizer dumps, wow, wasn't that an interesting period and still is? All these things coming out, people are starting to go, oh, wait a minute. And that's making a massive difference. So yes, I do believe truth will always come out and justice always follows behind. Timescale, I don't have one. It's not going to happen tonight, tomorrow, and the next year. I think it's still going to take a bit of time. But I do have that faith and hope. Otherwise, why am I doing what I'm doing? That there is an end place to be. Unfortunately for myself, I've accepted that my end place doesn't end with just the getting the proper help and support for me, and others, in particular for these three sort of issues that we're having at the moment. But it now goes to touch those who have been fighting a single fight because there's only one or two of them that we didn't get because social media wasn't where it was. That's the one thing that's happened. We can now see, there's not 1, 2, or 3. There's fucking thousands of us worldwide. And it is all coming together. I remember saying to you, my ultimate most powerful way that we could be was if everyone, all these groups around the world, all the vaccine injured, the groups got together, they got organised, and then globally worked together with the proper medical professionals, legal professionals. This all starting to happen in the background. And that gives us, people like me, even more hope that there is progress. You're right, we can't change what's happened to us, but there is progress in maybe stopping this happening to others.
Yeah.
And that's equally, so yeah, I know that this is the hill in many ways that I go on, whether that be medically, because obviously my condition's still very fragile, and unfortunately it's irreversible. It can't, at the moment, their knowledge isn't good. They don't have enough knowledge to say. So at the moment, we're saying it's irreversible, but it's manageable. But we don't know the long term. You're right. The reality is, an amputation on a body and what the trauma that it's done has an impact on lifespan. I am not that naive to think that I'm suddenly back ever going to make full health and normality. I'm fully aware where this ends. And in many ways, I've made peace with that, because as a person, I didn't have many fears in life. As a scaffolder, I had even less fears in many ways. And when you face that final moment, for that's what it is, you realise that there really isn't anything to fear. And I suppose in some ways I take the courage out of that, and the fact that, see, when you've got somebody that's lost everything and they've got fuck all to lose, they are a really dangerous enemy. Because in many ways we are prepared to die, and we know we're going to die for this cause. People think that's a thing that you shouldn't say, things like that, but the truth is that, that's the reality. So I've got to face that reality, and I've made peace with that. I really genuinely have. And I do want to say to people, there is nothing to fear. I certainly in that moment, I had no fear. And I've got absolutely none now. So have I changed? Yes, obviously I wouldn't change, but I have. I became very cynical. My trust has gone, and my tolerance has kind of went out the window to a certain extent. I used to sort of most things that I could walk past and go no, but now I go no. Either you deserve the praise for that, or you deserve to be told. And I thought, that is me. And so that hasn't changed in some ways. But yes, I have. And I tell people, I've got absolutely no respect for you until you give me some reason to respect you. Don't take that personally, but you've got to understand where I've been. And I still am. Part of the thing I'm really struggling to deal with is that, knowing officially that your own Scottish government, never mind the UK government, wants absolutely nothing to do with you in any shape, way or form. Yeah, they're happy to send letters to Westminster fighting the vaccine damage payment, which is a UK government thing. But I've had absolutely not one contact from the Scottish government in any way, shape or form, other than the blue letters to say, would you like a booster? You've not got a second vaccine. Despite the fact that it's all over my records and on the system, because I've complained twice, that I have exemption, and it's on the system. And said that, it's on my medical records that I no longer can be given a vaccine due to my reaction to a vaccine. Would that not red flag not to send you this stuff? And I got one just before Christmas. And you're thinking, so not only are you refusing to help me officially, you're actually adding to what I'm going through.
100%.
And, it's bad enough to feel abandoned in any way, shape or form, but to be abandoned by the country of your birth.
Yeah.
And I'm very passionate about being a Scotsman, to the point that I'm actually ashamed to be Scottish. It's a weird mind melt. And to a certain extent, you're abandoned by the UK government. You know, I think that but the other side I look at that is go, wow, that's a fucking badge of honour. How many people can this world can say, not only were they abandoned and slung to the side by one government, but two? You know, so I'm holding some records that I really don't want to ever to hold. You know, I went through 1.5 litres of morphine in 6 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'll tell you something else I went through when we finished the call that'll blow the head off you. You know, I've set some records that in some ways you go, wow, yeah, but it's not the records that particularly in life that you think that's a record I'd love to have, you know. So yeah, you could sit and get down and look at just how negative this is, but yeah, I always come back to the humour. You've got to look at how fucked up is a world that an individual feels, and not just feels, but has and shows the whole world that he's been abandoned by two governments. And you know, that in itself, for anybody to take on board, you're sitting going, that's absurd. But that's just how absurd this carnage shit show of the last nearly 3 years now, coming on. And here's the set, it doesn't look as if it's going away because they just keep pushing and pushing. They're coming again, you know. And you look at some of the things that they're coming out, you know, excess deaths through the roof across the world. Now, I'm not saying what the reasons why are and what the reasons not are. What I'm saying is you should really be trying to figure out why we're having all these fucking excess deaths. That's way above anything expected. So, you know, there's certain things that it's like, you know, if it's not hitting you between the eyes, why are you not seeing this?
It's a problem of the individual or institution. I think, firstly, people don't want to face. They don't want to be uncomfortable. And secondly, when people come into groups, sometimes they change. Like when people, they get kind of brainwashed by a kind of group think. But also, there's been a mass effort by even social media, by all forms of media, and healthcare systems, government, and the justice system to just cover it up. So obviously there is a link, but no one wants to talk about it because there's a taboo to it. You know, and people find excuses and stuff. So it's understandable to an extent, but it's obviously the one cause because no one wants to talk about it. You know, the silence is deafening. Like, the fact that you don't want to talk about it is obviously this, then, isn't it? Because if it was, you would be like, okay, it's this, but it's unlikely because we've done safety trials and it doesn't show this. Okay, fair. Let's move into something else. But the fact that you don't want to talk about the one agent that's most likely the cause is the answer.
How big does the elephant in the room have to be before you can't get in the room?
Yeah, literally.
You know, and that's kind of, and it sometimes the easiest analogies are the probably the best. You look and go, at what point do you not see that this is a problem? Because we're now, the general public, I would say, are becoming very aware that they're looking at, seeing all these people like myself that we're not made up, we're not bots, we're genuinely ordinary living human beings who we can show and we can see that this has happened to, and the numbers are growing and growing and growing. And they're looking and going, well, hold on, none of this is on the telly. None of this is on the news. And it really, they start to go, well, hold on, he's not made up. He's not fake. So why are they not telling us? And that's when people are starting to go, hold on a minute. But they keep pushing with it. And it's not just one sort of a field, that it's every field that they have. You know, right, social media. I was labelled misinformation. As you know, every post I was getting restricted. I was shadow banned. I was restricted. My thread was choked. Everything, and it's still happening to a certain extent. You know, will that ever change? Yeah, it's got better. I'm going to say, yeah, whether Mr. Musk's ideas for what Twitter was or is and what he wants it to be, he's certainly not doing this for Alec Mitchell, that's for sure. But what he is, at the moment, I have got is a freedom to tell my story without being shut down on just even Twitter. And I will gladly take that opportunity while I can. You know, is it always going to be the case? I don't know. Is it going to get easier and freer? I hope so. So far, he's done pretty much what he said he was wanting to do with it. Well, while it's going for the general and the best for everyone, yeah, I'm happy for it, because it allows me to try and raise awareness to other people that are walking about thinking that the world's a certain way. I don't want to terrify people. I don't want people to be sitting breaking their heart over what's happened to me. It's not going to change it. I want them to be aware that this can happen, and when it can happen, there is no road for you. There is no path. There's no process for you to follow. And when you start to go down the various roads you've got to go, whether it be emotional support, psychological support, financial support, whatever, you realise that every single process has got a block in it. There's not a straightforward go to Z. That's the answer to this. You've got to jump all these hoops. And that's, I think, what has to change.
Yeah.
In many ways. But I think we will. I do believe that we'll get there. I know we're getting there. I know we're getting there. And I always say that I know I'm going to get there, because in my opinion, and this is maybe an ego, but it's my humble opinion, and it's true what I believe, and is that I've never lost a fight that I wanted. I've never not achieved anything I set out to do in my life, ever. So, in my opinion, they've done two things. They have misjudged and got wrong. One, they've pissed off a Scotsman. Two, they've pissed off a Scottish scaffolder. And in many ways, I'm doing this for me. Yeah, because I need the help and the support. But I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. Because no decent human being in any level would ever want another human being to go through what I'm going through.
No.
In any way, shape, or form. So that's what that we will do for the rest of our days in one way, shape, or form. Will we always spend 24 hours 7 doing this? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think there will come a day when we can actually have genuine conversations about other things in our life that we are passionate and love. The things that you do with friends, you talk about what you enjoy, don't you? And this is certainly not a subject that anybody enjoys. It's not an easy read, is it, in times?
No. I mean, I'll be there with you, and I think the team will always be growing. And I will also, I have the same passion and will not stop. Sometimes I say I'm like a pit bull. I will not stop if, like once I've made my mind up on something, I will do it.
But you have proved that already.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
because you said you were going to write a book. You done it.
Well, you have to, because people are dying. People are unwell. Sometimes I feel like how are we not out on the streets more? How are people still accepting the amount of excess deaths in the UK? Is, for me, people are dying and we're still not willing to listen. People are actually losing their lives. That's the most precious thing they have. And there's institutions and individuals who are still stubbornly looking away. I'm like, there's nothing more that you could do than someone who's dying. There's nothing else that you could really do. So I feel like you, I feel like I'm very normal and ordinary, but I feel like I had to do this, and I have to do this because there's the only way forward. There was no other option.
Yeah, I think that's we were sharing that pivotal moment in humanity, that those that are at that place now know we can no longer just talk the talk.
Mm.
For the reality is, for humanity, we have to walk the walk. So if you're going to say something, you have to do it. And whether it be irrespective of what it is you say you're going to do, you know, that's in many ways irrelevant. The fact that you've said you were going to do it and you've done it, that gives you something about yourself as well. So there's so much on it that people need to realise that it's good for them.
Mm.
Because when you stand up for what's right, you feel better about yourself because it's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there's lots of positives in it. Are we going to save everyone? No, we're not, Ish.
Mm.
We're going, sadly and tragically, we're going to lose lots more. We can't dwell on that too much because the impact of that sometimes was put us over the edge. But the reality is we can't save everyone, and we're not going to save everyone. We can only try and do everything we can to try and save as many as we can until we stop these things, until we know the long-term data or the long-term information of what's going on. Will we ever know? I really don't know, because this thing is at a level that's way beyond our level of science. And I'm talking even medical level of science. You know, the top hematologists are struggling to understand this bloody thing. So the people that created it, invented it, are clearly further down the road than we are. The only hope is that these people are then somehow put into a place, one way or another, that they are no longer working to create these things. They're working to undo some of, because they've got more knowledge of what, because they say obviously VITT, been down to the antibody level. That's never been there before at that level.
No.
So therefore, you have to get the people that created it at that level to try and repair it, if it's
Alex,
possible.
I don't even think they know, honestly.
No, I agree, they don't.
I don't, because they don't even have data on the proteomics, on the how it changes kind of protein structure more than, I think, 48 or 72 hours. So they literally, on humans, they have no long-term data. They have no data, not even long-term data.
Well, they do. It's us. We're the data.
Yes, you are. But they're not studying you. They don't want to.
Yeah, so therefore that's where you have to say, hold on a wee minute here. And that goes back to the MHRA and, you know, things like that, and the Department of Health and Securities. These people, you'd think, if you really want to fix them, you would be asking those questions.
Yeah.
And the fact that in 18 months, despite me being very vocal about all of this and clearly saying, given that you say I'm the first in the world to survive, why wouldn't you be interested in me? So therefore, it goes to the question, is this about health or what is it about? Now, there's lots of possible what's it about. One of them we do know and we can prove that it's not. It's about wealth. Because the money that's been volumed out of this, lockdowns, TP contracts, we can, you know, track and trace the vault. It's it $500 billion we're at?
Yeah, even the marketing itself.
Now the strange thing is, the world's finances has changed by $500 billion. The reality is that the bottom 2/3 are down $500 billion and the top third is up $500 billion. So it's not as if there's money being lost. It's just money's went, because money has been made, and we now see just how nefarious that has been. VIP rush lanes, you know, people getting peerships and lordships and donations. There's so much wrong with politics. We started the conversation there before we started recording about talking about politics. I think, does politics work? Yeah, of course it works if it's done the right way. But if your job is to do one thing and you have another job, then clearly not all your focus is on that job. You know, so therefore, yes, there's lots of it that it's the people that needs to be stripped out. There's nothing wrong with the processes in many ways, that they can be cleaned up and sped up and fixed up, and most of them are fair in many ways. We can work on the ones that are not, but so therefore it's the people that's the problem. And that goes down to the, what is a politician? What should be a politician? It should be somebody with honour, respect, courage, the intelligence to think, look at the bigger picture, all of these things, and it should be integrity. Many of the things that they claim they are. But again, that's where society is, isn't it? They're all talking the talk. There's quite a few of them. But unfortunately, we can clearly see there's quite a few of them walking a different fucking walk.
It's because we value what people say more than what they do in this world. We value the actors, or we value the politicians who work the camera or are very suave and good looking, but we don't value the ones who tell us the things that we don't want to hear. We don't value people or anyone who say, "Wait, hold on a minute, we shouldn't be doing this, unsafe." We think they're party people as well. But until whatever they said was correct, whether it's now or 200 years ago, and then we go, "Oh, yeah, we maybe should have listened." But it just loops again and again because we don't listen to the truth.
We need to change that loop thing, and it goes back to the study I was saying. Part of the study, the results of it were that something like 67% of us have got anxiety, 71% have got depression, and 87%, I think it is, have got PTSD. And I think society's got PTSD in some ways, if we look at it that way, because we're stuck at this moment.
It's because, sorry, just to intervene, because society is run, especially modern society, talking about, it's run on trauma. It's a trauma-centric way of living. If you take an individual from a good family who can afford good food in a good school with nothing gone wrong in their childhood from a young age, and then there's no social media to confuse these young children, there's no kind of bullying and things like that, then these individuals will become confident and self-sufficient, and therefore they will produce, and the world will change as a result, and will become kind of better in that way. However, we live in a world where we like cheap entertainment. We like the people who lie and who are corrupt are paid more favorably than those who tell the truth, who are genuine people who have integrity. Actually lose out in modern society, as you can see in your case or in many other people. You had to leave your jobs, or you can't do exactly what you have to say. Whilst those who are more who need power a bit more, or who enjoy power or looking above, or who like to control, they're the ones who are controlled. They're the ones who are in control. And they usually lack integrity and things like that. And obviously, you can extrapolate that to the kind of nth degree, and then you have people who we all know who like to control everything, the world and seeds and media and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's a problem within. I think in some ways I feel sorry for these people, because they don't have. When you lose everything and you're still okay with yourself, that's a true freedom, because you're not reliant on anything external. But people who run on trauma, I'm talking about not the layman, but the individuals who run the world. Because there's something missing, they will always be searching, and we will always be the ones affected by their search. Yeah. So the answers to life are very simple: to look after one another, to be kind, don't harm others, do to others what you would like them to do to you. Very simple, extremely simple. Everyone knows this. It's in the Bible and every kind of scripture around the world.
I was just going to touch on that.
Do we listen? And do we understand it properly? I don't think we do. I think a few people do, but not everyone does. And people look at scripture like homework more than actually a way to live. I don't follow any religion, but I believe I have concepts in me that many religions would say, yes, which is what we've been preaching, because they're just logical concepts, these things. But it just seems like the world is now run on trauma, and that needs to change.
Yeah, I look at it that you have a faith, and whatever that faith is, and you get comfort and solace out of that, then that is a good thing, and that faith is real to you. And I have no right to tell you otherwise. That's a good thing. Do I have a faith? I don't particularly have a particular religious faith. I was brought up Roman Catholics. I was taught by nuns and Jesuit priests, so it wasn't quite religion. It was more drummed into you. That's why most Catholics have problems with knees, because they're always in their bloody knees praying to a certain extent. That did that make me believe that in one thing or another? No, it showed me things that I knew not to be true, and it showed me things that was true to a certain extent. I think ultimately for me it's about what is the right thing for the majority. Is that a religion? No, I don't think so. I think it's just what's the decent right thing to do. If you want to call that a religion, that's up to you. To me, that's just it's the standards, morals, ethics, and principles things again, isn't it? Try and be nice to people, because it costs nothing. Civility is cheap. Compassion's nothing. All these really important things are free. And why don't we share them more then? Why do we hold on to, why is it people feel more comfortable leaving a snide comment than actually some random stranger that's done something that it may not be what you think is a fantastic achievement or worth it. It's irrelevant, but the fact that that person has done it, to give them the compliment for that. Because that is what we need to change.
It's a reflection. Reflection of themselves. When I ever see bad comments on social media, I mean, I learned a long time ago not to really take it in, but even then, it does. If you do read them, it does kind of jolt that moment. But you go, now I go, as long as I know I'm doing right, no one can judge me, and if they do, it's more on them. It's on them. It's their internal dialogue and perception has typed it. That energy has been given out, and I'm doing everything correctly. I mean, as much as I can. I try to help as much people as I can, but this energy isn't from them. Isn't being given to the individuals that need it, like the people who run the world. These people don't give them the energy. I'm like, it's very strange. It's very
strange. I call it sometimes the upside down world. And it's part of my life. My life is upside down to a certain extent. I kind of think, okay, so you're going to attack a fellow human being for saying what they're struggling and suffering with, but you're going to applaud something that you clearly know is not your best interest at heart. I struggle with that one. People put people in places, and you're right. These people are out for wealth and power, and they're for the wrong reasons. So therefore, they're not capable of understanding what the impacts are, because they don't see it. They don't look for it. Some of them don't care. That's obviously clear. What I say is everyone we're all at different stages on this just now, and it's going to continue for a long time. And if someone just becomes aware of everything that's going on, even next year, despite everything, we can't keep giving these people a hard time. Because, let's be honest, given what you know and I know, would you rather not know what you know? And I certainly wouldn't don't want to know 3/4 of what I know now. So therefore, was it not leave them in their happy place? Because it's an innocent place to be. Because let's be honest, your perception of the world gets destroyed.
You can't force it as well. You can't force them. It has to be an internal insight. The insight must come from within, and the willingness to be vulnerable to listen. The listening, I think number one, the thing we need to be doing in the world is listening. I think actually not hearing, not on your phone while someone else is talking, not wanting to hear, not putting words into other people's mouths, so wanting to hear what you want to hear in their voice, not talking to someone and putting your concepts in the conversation, but just holding back and just listening, intently listening. Because I think every conversation can teach you, whether good or bad, anything in the world can teach you, because it's all about internal perception of the outside world. So you could see cats. So I've got 2 kittens now, and I'm learning from them.
Oh yeah.
I'm just learning from them. I'm just like, but I could also be someone who never learns from my cats. So the cats are the same. The cats will not change, but it's me whether I want to learn or not. So the wanting to learn and wanting to be open, and this goes across all of humanity. From, I always try to meditate and look at myself and go, well, did I, in that conversation, was I open enough? Or in this study, was I open enough? I try to be unbiased as I can, because I understand this information is not mine. It's just information. And I think scientists have to look at information and go, this is not my theory, my information. It's just information. I am a translator to the actual world of information. That's all it is. And actually, we should be, science is about disproving so we can move on. But instead, it's changed to more like, this is my cult theory and I'm going to stick to it even if it's wrong. And this also extends to everyone else. And if I'm wrong, I'll say, hands up, I'm wrong. And I would be happy to change my whole life if that's the case. But I think the art of listening, the art of mainly compassionate listening intently, wanting to hear, wanting to change, being on that, and then only then can individuals be on the same wavelength, on the same mission, and then we can understand that we're in the same boat. So we need to get to the one destination, and if one is paddling one way, one the other way, we're never going to get anywhere. So we have to be on the same wavelength. And yes, it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, very much so. Because the world has there's so many different factions out there. And that's the reality. And you're right, it's going to take so much time for all that to come together. I do think it will happen. I have to believe it will happen, because otherwise, why are we doing what we're doing if I'm not totally committed to try and change what is to what's a better version? I'm not saying I've got all the answers. I've got none of the fucking answers, Ish. I've only got what I think the right thing to do at that time for the right reasons for everyone. And will we get it all right? No, we're going to get a lot of it wrong. But you're right, as long as we can look back and go, we went wrong there. Let's go back to there and let's start working again. That's something that I was taught at school. To learn, if you don't learn the lessons from your past mistakes, then you're not learning. Now, that doesn't just go as educational, that's at the subliminal human level. And we all have a duty to continue to do that. I think that's what's changed. The way we're educated has been drastically changed. I go back to the old O levels, so that's how old I am. And when you did your O levels, you've got an essay to do. And when I was at school, I think it's still the same, you do it on a book. But nowadays, my understanding is they give you a choice of 2 books or a book. That's not education. That's direction. Because when I did my O levels, I was allowed to pick any book of my choice. And the book I picked was A Sense of Freedom by Jimmy Boyle, which was a really controversial subject and still is to this day. And I did a 3-page story on the effects of the human being, and the story from not that human, but a human being going from where he was to where he became, and going by the book. And yeah, I got my O level, but that's not the point. But the point is, I was allowed to critically think my choice, and that's what's wrong with education. In my honest opinion, I'm not uneducated to the level of that. I've always said that there's far more clever and knowledgeable, experienced people out there than me that are better qualified to say these things. But like every other human being, I have my own sort of thoughts on that. And yeah, that is where I think a lot of where we went wrong.
I think you're saying in a way, like you had the freedom to explore.
Yes. I had the freedom.
The freedom, yeah.
You know, I had the freedom. We didn't have mobile phones. You know, we didn't have as a family our first colour telly till I was 13. You know, so technology, what's happened in the last 50 years alone is at a level that we've never seen. So yeah, it's changed so much. As much as we say, you know, these things are watching you, they're tracking you, they're taking all your data and all the rest of it, the reality is we get so much information from them too. So we've bought into that narrative to a certain extent that these things that we are talking on have got control over us because we've got them on us 24/7. I do think that will change. Yeah. That perception of gathering all the information that it's not about. I think technology is a very important, valid tool, but we have to balance it.
Yeah.
And I think that will change for the better because people are realizing, hold on, what I was taught at school is not what's reality. Whereas a lot of what I was taught, that we were taught generationally wise, was reality. And I think that's what's the difference, that people are now coming out and saying that what they're telling me and what I was trained and what I was taught to do is not what I'm seeing. And more people are saying, well, if that's not what I'm seeing, well, what is the reality? Then reality is totally the opposite. So therefore, we need to make sure that we change that to allow critical thinking. Because if we're not critical thinkers, how can we improve ourselves as human beings individually? So therefore, you do become this. And I understand that this kind of sort of a thought of people saying they want to turn us into robots. Not physically, but metaphorically. Because if we don't critically think, we can't see the pitfalls, and therefore we can be used and abused. And the whole, you could talk for hours and how far that goes and to what level, but I do see a massive hope, and I always say that, you know, why are we doing and putting everything you're putting into this, and thinking that we're going to fail? I'm sorry, but you're setting yourself up for failure. If you go in believing you're going to win, and you do everything you possibly can, there's a fair chance you will. But it's not about me winning me. It's about us as a whatever group, society you belong to, winning together, you know, because there's so many different camps out there. And some of them, and it's right to have those camps. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. And there's nothing wrong with your opinion if it's fair and open and you're willing to listen and talk. And it's exactly, you're right, that's the key to an awful lot of this, talking and listening.
Yeah, it's so simple. I think that's probably why it kind of flumps us. It kind of confuses us, because we have been conditioned in the last 200 years to only put forward anything technological as something that's good. But actually, a lot of things in life, it's very simple, and we don't, as you can, we don't need a new car, we don't need a new iPhone necessarily, but we want it because it's put in, it's normalized, in adverts and stuff. But actually, we don't need any of it. I mean, to an extent we do to survive in the world we do now. But on the human level, what we need is just good communication, security, food, family, friends, love, and this we always have to make sure we have. I'm just looking at the time. I was wondering.
3 hours.
Yeah.
2
hours, 40 minutes. Amazing.
Wow. Yeah, I think we may have to wrap it up shortly, and I can get my breakfast that's now became a cold lunch.
Sorry. Yeah, let's wrap up.
No, I thoroughly enjoyed it, Ish.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and it's went so many different avenues, but I think it's hopefully covered everything that you wanted to talk about and listen to, and certainly what I wanted to talk about and listen to.
Yeah, I mean, I came into this with no expectations. And leave selfishly with a bit of for a lot of times it does seem like you're on a lonely path, not lonely, but you're kind of by yourself in this thing, because even though social media is very active in these matters, it's the people there, they've always been there, and it's become like a chamber, like an echo chamber. But in the real world, the outer world, people aren't actually informed, and so someone like me and someone like you maybe can feel as a kind of alone or like a one-man mission. So it's kind of nice on an intellectual level and a psychological level, and even on a kind of spiritual level to an extent, they were very similar. And I think the past few years, even though we've gone through different journeys, we've come to very similar conclusions, and that gives me hope. That tells me that's the right path. It's been very nice to talk to you.
I think you've put that very, very well, Ish. You're right. I never go into these with any expectations. I never, some people say, do you want questions that we're going to ask beforehand? I don't, because I don't think that's natural. I'd rather you got what comes from the heart. And so therefore I had no real concept of where the conversation would lead us and where we would go, but we've spent, as you say, nearly 3 hours, and I have thoroughly enjoyed many aspects of it. And it's been a pleasure, as always. I'm looking forward to actually getting my book. Someone's actually begged a copy or begged a read of it before I get it, and I'm like, no. And to give you a boost up of that, it's actually my senior prosthetics lady. It was, it says, because obviously she always asks what I'm up to, and I kind of say, some of the zany things that are happening to me that really should never be happening to me. And I don't just mean the loss of leg, I mean the thing like asking to write a foreword to a book, something that for me is a huge personal, and I'll ever be eternally grateful for that. I really will be. And I was saying, she said, "Oh, but where's it on sale?" So I said, "Oh, it's on Amazon." And I showed her, and I said, "I'm waiting my copy coming through." And she said, "Oh, you getting a copy? Are you taking a copy?" I said, "No, I'm getting a signed copy." And she said, "Oh, can I read it?" So yeah, you're making bigger waves than sometimes we realise.
And your story, I'm so grateful for your story there, and that you helped me connect with other people as well, and their stories have been shared as well in that book.
Yeah, because it's not all about me. Because if they keep seeing
it's about
me,
everyone, isn't it?
Yeah, if you keep seeing me all the time, then I'm rare, aren't I? And I'm that one guy that everybody sees, and we know that that's not the case. So the more that come out and speak up and say, "This is my story, this is my truth, I'm not going to change it," then the more chance that it will happen quicker.
I'm hoping to be speaking to many of these people in the future, and doctors and other people on this podcast. But I am very grateful that you're the first one on this podcast, and I hope we will have more conversations in the future.
Yes, definitely. I don't envy the job of trying to edit this into something that's at a reasonable length. Good luck with that one. I look forward to actually seeing what you manage to sort of right, that kind of works to put that together. Good luck with that one. And if I really do genuinely look forward to seeing you in London
Oh yes, yes.
I am
Me
definitely
too.
going. My flights are booked. My hotel's booked.
Perfect.
And my lovely wife's going to be with me.
Oh, lovely.
So that'll be a very good experience. If Edinburgh's in to go with, London's going to be epic. And I've seen what some of the stuff we're using. I can't say much, but wow, even I'm excited. I'm like, holy fuck. On that note, I'll catch you in London. Take care, my friend, and thank you.
You too.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.